I saw the hazards first. Two trembling orange blinks on a thin shoulder with nothing but dark fields on either side. When I pulled in behind the small sedan, a kid stepped out, shaking. Flat left rear, rim kissing gravel. I told her to sit tight, lifted my jack, and then I saw who was in the back seat. The woman looked up, and my throat closed. In a week, I'd stand in front of her to ask permission for my future. Before we get into it, tell her where you're watching from. Drop it in the comments and follow for more stories like this. Here's what I knew. I am 33, live in a second-floor walk-up that smells like old varnish in summer, and carry a socket wrench with my father's initials scratched into the handle. Here's what I didn't know. The exact moment a quiet road could decide whether the rest of my life opened or closed. I'm not a flashy kind of man. I work with my hands, always have. My mother says I came out reaching for a screwdriver. My father taught me to respect weight, how a jack should sit, what a bolt feels like when it's tight enough, the way metal is honest if you listen. He died when I was 25, and the wrench with his initials, JD, the J almost gouged through from the pressure he used, came to me in a coffee tin with spare washers and a faded note. Fix the small thing you can reach. It sat on my dresser for a long time, like a challenge. Fix what? Bills? The shakes that run through you when a rent increase lands? The way a man's chest tightens at the end of a month when there's less left than the list says there should be? I've worked every version of an honest shift. Warehouse, delivery, building maintenance, a stint changing oil at a garage that smelled like coffee and old promises. Lately, I've had two jobs that almost meet in the middle. Mornings at a hardware store that sells patience in boxes, nights on a contract crew patching parking lots when the moon and the schedule allow. Between them, I can see a life I can almost hold, and this is what it looks like. A mobile roadside service that is just me, a compressor, plugs, seals, cones, and a small van that doesn't groan when you ask too much. I don't dream about owning a fleet. I dream about being the person people call when a small emergency bloats into fear. Tires aren't romance, but they are the point of contact between a person and their plan. When rubber gives, a day collapses, and sometimes a life does too. I've seen that. You probably have too. To go from dream to licensure, there are steps. In my city, if you want to operate a mobile service and accept payments in public right-of-way, you need a permit. If you want a permit, you present a plan to the Licensing and Small Enterprise Board on the third Thursday of the month. You bring insurance letters, a safety plan, a map of the places you will and won't work. If you're me, you bring a van that's technically a truck with windows and hope they care less about paint and more about method. I also applied for a microgrant. It's not charity if you're going to work for it. It's a push. I told the Community Foundation exactly what I would buy. A proper jack that doesn't hate me, a compressor that can fill a tire and not cough mid-sigh, reflective cones, and a printer for cards, so I don't keep handing strangers my name scribbled on the back of receipt paper. The hearing was set. The grant interview the day after. I had the date circled, I had my suit cleaned, I had a file folder thick enough to hold my whole chest, and, because the universe likes a good joke, I had a boil on my neck that throbbed when I turned my head too fast. A reminder, I suppose, that even the body requires maintenance. What does a man do while waiting on a board to make his future a line item? He keeps showing up. He keeps tools in the van. He keeps chalk in his pocket to mark where a jack sits right. He keeps his father's wrench in the glove box in case courage needs a weight. And he practices saying the sentence he's going to say to the board chair, the woman at the end of the table, whose photograph in the paper always makes her look like she eats budgets for breakfast. My name is Adam Daniels, and I'm here to make small emergencies smaller. That was the name I repeated in the mirror. That was the name a scared teenager said back to me in the dark when her knuckles were white on the edge of a window, and the left side of her car kissed gravel in a way that meant someone had cut too sharp, too late, and found the one piece of whatever it was that shouldn't have been there. Rain wasn't falling. It had fallen earlier and left the world slick and inked, a kind of shine that makes each light look like it is trying to be two. The road out past the old industrial park curves for the sake of beauty, and then forgets to warn you it's going to ask more of your tires than they have signed up for. That's where I saw the hazards. 2 orange blinks breathing like a panicked chest. The shoulder was so thin, the car's left wheels kissed the edge of nothing. I pulled in behind at a slant, cones out before my door shut. The habit of stepping into the road with your body lowered, so you are bigger to oncoming breath, so you see eye level to fear, that's a thing you learn by staying alive. The girl's door opened, and she was all elbows in apology. "I'm so sorry," she blurted, as if I were a police officer or a father or a sentence she'd failed to finish. "I didn't see the—" I lifted my hand. "We can talk after we're safe." "Okay." Her fingers went to her throat like she'd forgotten it was there. "Okay." "What's your name?" I asked, walking around to see where the car had had enough. "Lily," she said. This isn't even my car. My grandfather—" The left rear was flat in a way I could feel in my own ribs. Not a slow leak, a conversation with something sharp. The rim hadn't bit down yet. That was good news. "You did the right thing stopping," I said. I keep my voice the way I wish people had kept theirs with me when I was young and shaking. "Parking brake on?" She nodded. Her hands weren't steady. The car's backseat was a shape in the dark, the outline of a hat or maybe a person sleeping. I set a chock behind the right rear, slid my jack in where metal wants it, and told Lily what I was doing. A jack should come up like a man clearing his throat. If it lurches, you've asked wrong. "Spare?" I asked. Newer cars hide them like they're ashamed. I don't know," she said. "I only just started learning. He says I'm too careful." I smiled at that. "Too careful is how you go home. Pop the trunk." No spare. A tiny compressor and a canister of sealant that is a lie more often than not. "It's okay," I said. "You hit something sharp and mean. I'm going to do a plug. 10 minutes. "Plug?" She said it like a hope. "A little bit of magic and a string that wants to be more than string," I said. "Have you ever seen one?" She shook her head. I was already on my knees. I carry a headlamp because a man gets to choose between his eyes and his pride exactly one time. The puncture was clean, a small, wicked hole. Probably a piece of metal that had flown off whatever men like me should have fixed sooner. I pulled the nail with pliers, reamed the hole, fed the plug, twisted until the world stopped arguing, and set the compressor to hum. That's when the back door opened. She had to be in her late 60s or early 70s if the world counts right. Winter coat, although the night was only crisp. Hair that refused to be anything other than itself. A pair of eyes that had learned to see both balance sheets and people. There was something familiar about the set of her mouth. She looked at me as if I were a painting she couldn't place, and then smiled without showing teeth. "Is it safe to get out?" she asked, voice calm, like she was the one who ought to be steady, because someone had to be. "Safer on the curb," I said, getting the tone right without barking. "We're almost done." "Adam, this is my grandmother," Lily said. "I'm sorry, he was supposed to come. He got called. I said I could do it. I promised I could do it." Grandmother. The back seat occupant sat with her feet on the road like she belonged in any place she chose. Then she leaned forward, so the light found her face better, and the shape behind memory clicked into place. I had seen this woman's picture maybe a dozen times on the city's website and in the paper whenever a new regulation made vendors ignite like dry brush. "Mrs. Keene?" It came out before I could press it down. Her eyebrows lifted, a question. I stopped. "You don't introduce yourself to a board chair on the side of the road like you're at a reception. You put the air in the tire, and you put air in the kids' lungs by being unruffled." "We'll be moving in 2 minutes." She nodded like she approved of that answer more than anything else I might have said. Her hand settled on the top of the seat. Her fingers were calm. I thought about the file folder on my kitchen table and the way my father's initials felt in my palm. "Tell me your last name," she said, after a moment. Not a demand, a note. "Daniels," I said, before I could lie. "Adam." "Thank you, Mr. Daniels," she said, and returned to the back seat. I could feel Lily's breath shorten, and then even out, like she'd learned she didn't have to hold it. The compressor's hum changed pitch, the sound that says a tire is remembering itself. I checked twice, once for me, and once because maybe I would stand in front of this woman in 8 days, and I wanted to be the man who checks twice. "Okay," I said, lowering the jack. "We're going to go slow to the next exit. There's a fuel station with better light. Don't drive on the shoulder. Loose rock will make us both cry. I'll follow you." "You don't have to," Lily said. "Young people apologize like it's their birthright." "I want to," I said. "You're going to do fine." She swallowed, nodded, and slid behind the wheel like she was stepping back into a day she didn't want to break. Grandmother met my eyes through the glass. She didn't wink, she didn't nod. She just looked like a woman who sees something, writes it down in the part of her that matters, and waits to see if it matches later. At the station, I checked pressure, tightened the lug nuts for good measure, because a man can't resist that extra hand on the world, and gave Lily a card with my number written on the back in red electrical tape, because the pen I had in my pocket was a pencil's idea of a joke. The card was a piece of receipt paper, folded over. My name, and the words "Roadside Service," testing my luck. "How much?" Lily asked, digging for a purse that was a tangle of receipt ghosts and pens that had died honorable deaths. "No charge," I said. This is the kind of answer you know will make you explain yourself to your own stomach later. Sleep good. Mrs. Keene had paid me the only thing in her pocket, attention. She put her hand on Lily's shoulder. "Thank you again," she said. "Get home safe." "It was good to meet you," I said, and meant every word, both for the girl and for the woman who had made the room at City Hall feel like a moon I needed permission to walk on. We drove away in different directions. I carried home the smell of rubber and a feeling in my chest like an instrument that had been tuned slightly better than it was before. At my kitchen table, I put my father's wrench on my file folder and wrote one sentence on the back of the receipt paper I was trying to pretend was a business card. "Fix the small thing you can reach." Then I slept and dreamed about a room with humming lights and a long table, and how sometimes a person doesn't have to say anything at all to tell you exactly what they're made of. There is a way fluorescent lights do a number on a man's nerves that I don't think is entirely accidental. They hum like a thought you can't finish. The licensing and small enterprise board meets in a room that looks like someone took the idea of a courtroom and asked it to be polite. Long table, name placards, a pitcher of water that tastes like the cup remembers another life, and a row of chairs that makes applicants sit on their hands so they don't wring them. I arrived early because that's how you tell your own chest you're trying. My suit is the kind that doesn't need a brand, just clean and honest and a little too warm in the armpits if you walk too fast. I had my folder, I had the file with insurance, plan, route map, a simple website printout that says who I am and what I refuse to do, toe jobs, anything on a blind curve, anything that asks a man to juggle too much danger just to meet someone else's schedule. I had a picture in the back pocket of the wrench. When they called my name, I walked to the table and set my folder down. People were already seated. 2 board members with pens poised like they could triangulate a life with ink. A clerk whose eyes were kind because someone in a room always should be. And at the end, exactly where she sits when the room needs to decide whether a day opens or closes, was Mrs. Keene. She looked different without road and night pressing on her. Not softer, exactly, just like the light knew where to land. Her hair was the same. Her eyes did not pretend to not know me.
She nodded once, a public way of saying private things. I see you. We will do this in order. Be the man you were. Mr. Daniels, said the chair to her left, a man with a tie that needed to calm down. Present your proposal. I don't love talking about myself. I love speaking about work. There's a difference. Work is a story you can carry on your back. I opened the folder. My hand found the edge of the wrench's picture. I didn't pull it out. I just remembered the weight.
I'm applying for a mobile roadside service permit, I said, and let my voice be the tool it is, instead of a performance. Punctures, inflations, valve replacements. I'll operate within these zones. No highways, no bridges, no blind curves. I carry cones, lights, a compressor, and a plan. I've included my safety procedures, insurance, and a code of conduct. No cash-only sales, no unsolicited approach, no social media while on scene. A smile flicked across the clerk's face at the last one. The tie adjusted itself and spoke. We've had issues with, shall we say, overly enthusiastic vendors. I'm not enthusiastic. I'm available. There was a small ripple of sound. The board chair cleared his throat. Insurance is adequate, he said. Who trained you? My father trained me first, I said. Every man in my family has passed something down by hand. Then I learned in shops, 3 different places. Each one taught me a skill and a story. I have letters. I've included them. And if the person calling you is a teenager, someone asked from the back row, I hadn't noticed until my body went a little icy. Representatives from the grant program, sitting quietly like shadows that remember budgets. I talk to them like adults who haven't had enough practice, I said. I tell them what I'm doing and why. I make them safe first and informed second. Scared people want to be told that the world is going to be ordinary again. My job is to make that true. There's a rhythm to these rooms. You can feel when interest leans. You can sense the way a question is meant to pull you to your feet and check if you can steady yourself without putting your hand on the table. What about competition? The tie asked. We don't want to undercut existing businesses. I don't want to undercut anyone either, I said. I don't fix what needs a lift and a bay. I don't do things on the side of the road that belong inside. If I arrive and it's beyond me, I call a tow. Then wait until the human walks out of a truck that knows what it's for. People think independence is a brand. It's not. It's a responsibility. Mrs. Keene had not said a word. She didn't have to. This is the part of the process where a man convinces a room he's not a story they'll regret later. Then, when the moment arrived where the board asks for public comment, she lifted one finger. No one in the world needed more of an introduction than that gesture. Last week, my granddaughter and I had a flat off East Crescent. A gentleman pulled behind us, set cones, and made that small emergency smaller. He did not tell me his name at the time. He did not take my money. He checked twice. He used his body the way a person should in a dark road. He made a plan simple enough for a scared girl to understand. He followed to the next exit. She did not say it was me. She did not look for thanks. She set the facts on the table like tools and stood back. Is that a conflict? The tie asked quickly, a little too quickly, because men like him are afraid of the wrong line in the wrong paragraph. It's context, the clerk said softly. The chair turned to her. She had the kind of voice that makes rooms less foolish. Our criteria include safety and community benefit. And that was a statement to that effect. Mr. Daniels, please step out while we consider. I walked to a bench that made my knees far too aware of their own existence. I wasn't sick. I wasn't steady either. You wait outside rooms like this the way you wait outside hospital doors. You were the same man either way. The world decides which version it greets. When they called me back,
The tie had the look of someone who had been overruled by something as annoyingly practical as principle. The chair folded his hands. The clerk smiled without blessing. "Mr. Daniels," said the chair, "permit approved, with conditions. Your zones as submitted, quarterly safety reports for the first year. Any deviations require prior notice, and, pending approval from the Community Foundation, we would like to discuss a small pilot with the Youth Employment Program, basic roadside safety workshops delivered with the Foundation as partner." He paused. "And Mr. Daniels?" "Yes, sir." "Please print proper business cards." I laughed then. It startled me. It startled them, too. It sounded like a jack releasing a load you'd been holding too long. When I turned to gather my things, Mrs. Keene was already speaking to someone. She looked at me as if to say, "You will be busy now. Do not forget to be the man who checks twice." In the hallway, the grant representative stepped out of the shadow of her own stack of papers and said, "We'll see you tomorrow." She said, "Bring your list and your wrench for luck." I patted the folder where the picture was, because the actual wrench was at home, where the weight wouldn't confuse a metal detector. "Yes, ma'am," I said. "Thank you." The Community Foundation's office smells like paper that makes decisions, and coffee that understands the weight of them. I sat in a chair that had seen donors and pleas, and the particular brand of hope that sits between them. The grant coordinator, a woman with the kind of laugh that makes you think it's safe to tell the truth, lifted a file with my name on the tab. It looked like it had been read more than once. "Mr. Daniels," she said, "we heard a story last night at dinner." I raised an eyebrow. "About a man with cones and a girl who went home to sleep after thinking maybe she wouldn't." I didn't know what to do with my hands for a second, so I set them on my knees, like I do when I'm making a plan for a machine with its parts out. That posture saves you from gesturing at people's faces when your heart is making points. We like our grants to purchase things that make reports blush because they are so boring and so necessary. Jacks, compressors, tape. We like our grantees to send back pictures of those boring things working. We like stories, too. We like them most when they are true because someone wrote them down who had nothing to gain. We have one of those. She slid a piece of paper across the desk. It wasn't a letter on letterhead. It was receipt paper, folded over, red electrical tape along the edge like it had a bandage. My handwriting was there. My name, my number, and my father's sentence, a steadying line under both. "Fix the small thing you can reach." "Where did you—" I started, and then stopped, because there was only one answer, and it made my chest do a thing I'll never name out loud. "She dropped it off," the coordinator said. "Said she didn't need anything from you. Said we should make up our own minds." We have. We're funding the list. And the van signage, because the chair thinks you shouldn't be writing on the back of receipts like a man who doesn't believe he'll be called again. "For the record," I said, because humor is one of the few tools that sharpens under pressure, "I have been called best when I'm least prepared." We also have a request. There is a group of teenagers who are going to be working this summer, in parks and libraries. We want to add a Saturday morning with Mr. Daniels, cones, and jacks, and how not to be afraid of your own shadow at night. Interested?
"Yes," I said, fast enough to make me look more eager than wise. "Very." "Good," she said. "Bring the wrench." "You know about the wrench?" "Everyone in this town knows about a talisman when a talisman is working," she said, and smiled like she had been a person who needed one once, and someone had given it to her, and now she collected such stories for other people to borrow when their hands forgot how to be steady all on their own. The grant bought the compressor that fills a tire without making me pray. It bought cones that make a road understand it needs to share attention. It bought a proper reflective vest that doesn't make me feel like a traffic cone pretending to be a man. It bought cards, real ones, with my name and a website that was just a simple page with a sentence on it my mother cried when she read, "If you are afraid right now, I will not make you more afraid." The permit sat in a plastic sleeve in the glove box, behind the wrench. The van's side got a name, Small Emergency. Below it, 3 lines. Tires, air, calm. No highways, no bridges, no blind curves. We started on a Tuesday because Mondays feel like a dare nobody needs to take. The first call came from a mother whose kid had to be at a tryout in 20 minutes, and the universe had chosen that minute to remove all the air from her day. I told her how long I would be. I arrived when I said I would. I told her what I was doing and why. I asked her kid to hold the headlamp while I fed the plug, because a person who has held the light can see better later when the dark is trying to mess with them again. Kid passed the tryout. Mother pressed a bill in my hand, and I pressed part of it back with a smile and a sentence I had to learn like a script. Pay what you owe. You've already paid the rest. A week in, a letter came from a mailbox that has only ever carried trouble. Not this time. The city's youth program. A schedule. A request to invoice for time spent making teenagers less likely to be afraid of the dark and more likely to be the kind of people who make other people less afraid of the dark too. Saturday mornings under a shelter near the park. 20 kids, a pile of cones that looked like orange tulips, a chalk line on the asphalt to show where a jack sits without making a car scream, a board at the end where each kid wrote one sentence they were taking home. My favorite? The world is heavy, but not on my nose. You can tell when your life is changing by the way little things ask you to meet them. The van's door doesn't stick anymore. The phone rings and it's work, not debt. Men who used to nod and look past me now stop and ask if I have an opening for their cousin. A tire that goes flat at 8 in the evening no longer feels like an act of God. It feels like my job. And then there are the big things that make men lean on their counters and not tell anyone they are smiling at nothing. A month after the board approved my permit, I was on a shoulder telling a teenager about the way a valve cap is a small king who never gets thanked when a car door opened behind me and a pair of shoes that have never stepped in a puddle, if their owner could help it, wandered up to my cones. "Mr. Daniels," said Mrs. Keene, like a person who expects to be listened to because she always is, "use your Saturday morning voice, please. We're being joined." A cameraman and a woman with a microphone who would have made me run if not for the fact that I was holding a jack and dignity followed her. She kept walking until she reached my cones, and then she adjusted one because she is that kind of person.
"We're launching a small change with a long shadow," she said to the camera, after introducing me as if I were someone anyone would care about on a small screen. "The board will be piloting an addendum to our vendor permitting process, the small emergency waiver. If a permitted vendor is late to a call because they stopped to assist in a verified roadside distress within the city's limits, the lateness will be recorded but not penalized. Courtesy is not a business failure. It is good policy." She looked at me. "Do you think you'll ever use that, Mr. Daniels?" "I hope I don't have to," I said. "I also hope I do." She smiled like I had answered a question she didn't know she was asking. "Fix the small thing you can reach," she said to the camera. "We're going to help people who do that keep doing that." After they left, my hands shook, not from fear, from the knowledge that the sentence in my glove box had walked into rooms without me and learned to sit down at tables and not apologize for being there. This morning, I unlocked the van with the same key I've had since before it was a van and after it was an idea. The air was cool in the way that makes you think about coffee and good work. I had 3 calls scheduled and a class in the park at 10. In the glove box, the permit sat behind the wrench.
The electrical tape I used to bandage cards was in a neat roll because my mother came by 2 weeks ago and told me a business thrives on small things being where they belong. I still carry receipt paper because a man can change and remain himself at the same time. The kids in the park have learned to tell me the difference between fear and caution. I teach them the difference between a lug nut that's just shy and one that's lying. When they leave, they look at cones differently. They walk past shoulders and know they have bones. Lily comes by sometimes, 10 and 2 on the wheel, and a determination in her jaw that makes me laugh without sound. Her grandmother drops her off and never says hello like a neighbor. She says it like a person who understands that men show up because they said they would, and women do too. And that's the only language a city should ever speak. When I pull up behind a set of hazards now, my heart still accelerates. Not because I'm afraid, because I'm about to do the thing I promised myself I would do. The road still asks its questions. I still check twice. The receipt paper in my pocket still has a sentence on it that has carried me through rooms with humming lights and a bench outside where the breath won't slow. It's not glamorous. It shouldn't be. It's a living. It's a life. Sometimes at red lights, I hold the wrench in my palm and feel my father's initials with my thumb. JD isn't a brand. It isn't even a name that belongs to anyone who is here to answer to it. It's a weight. It's a reminder. It's the permission to be a man who crouches on a shoulder and talks to a scared kid like the world is ordinary, and that's what makes it so. I didn't plan to stop that night. I planned to get home, shower, and practice sitting up straight so a room would think I belonged in it. Instead, I put cones out and made a young driver breathe better. The room did too, later. That's how this works sometimes. You do the small thing because it is right. The large thing notices, or not. If it does, be the same man in both places. I write this line on the back of cards still, even though I have proper ones now. I hand it to people who ask me why I stopped, why I took less than I could have charged, why my cones are so clean. I write it because the world forgets, and because I do too. Fix the small thing you can reach. If this story spoke to you, if it reminded you of a time someone made your small emergency smaller, tell me where you're watching from and what happened. Share it in the comments, and follow for more stories like this about how ordinary days open when someone chooses to be useful. I'll be on the shoulder if you need me. Tones out, jack steady, calm on purpose.